So a little while ago, I bought a human skull, and I placed it over here on my shelf so that when I'm sitting over here doing my work throughout the day, I can kind of glance over and look at it. Every now and then when I'm sitting here and reading, I can acknowledge it. And it's become part of my daily routine. Now maybe you look at this and you think that's kind of gross, kind of morbid, a little uncomfortable. But for me, it actually brings me a certain level of calmness and balance to my mind. I've always reflected on the concept of death quite a bit throughout my life. And I think it's one of the few things in life that inspires me and really keeps my head on straight. It keeps my perspectives in line. I'd love to hear your experience on this, but for me, as time goes on, I feel like my life is passing me by quicker and quicker. Like weeks feel faster, months feel faster, years feel faster. And I'm getting to the age where decades are starting to feel like they're going by and I'm not quite grasping the speed at which it's moving. I'm 32 years old. And there's one thought that every time I let it pass my mind, I have a hard time believing it. The amount of time between when I was born to the middle of high school is the same amount of time from the middle of high school to right now. So me being in middle of high school was half of my life ago. Every time I think about that, it's hard to wrap my mind around that. It seems so unbelievable that it causes me to question my ability to track time as it goes by in my life. My mind has a hard time comprehending it, right? I struggle with it. And the struggle doesn't come from a fear of getting older or a fear of moving nearer and nearer to my death. The struggle comes from being aware that my grip on time moving by, it's kind of slipping through my hands. Things that were 10 years ago feels like it was 3 years ago. Things that were 20 years ago feels like it was 8 years ago. And that is sometimes hard for me to come to terms with. So like you've probably heard people, typically older people, say that, one day, enjoy your youth now while it lasts. Because one day you're gonna wake up and you're gonna be 50 or 60 or 70. You're gonna have wrinkly skin and back pain and you won't be able to bend over and life, your perspective will be different and you'll know that you're closer to the end. You hear that all your life, but once you get like a little bit of a backlog of experiences, you look back and you reflect and you say, you know what? The past 20 years, it doesn't feel like 20 years. Well, what if the next 20 years doesn't feel like 20 years? What if the next year feels like 5 years? And that's the thing that I want to align myself with to get a better grip with time as it moves along. So I think it's really important as consistently as possible on a daily basis to take a moment, even if it's just like a split second, to acknowledge that, okay, I'm alive right now. At some point, this thing that we call life, this time is going to end. And it's going to be unexpected. You probably won't see it coming. This consciousness thing that we're doing here, this isn't existence. This is an individual, subjective experience within existence. And I feel like the more aware of that I am, the more I do things to kind of make that as front and center as possible, the slower time goes. And the more unaware that I am, the more amount of time that I let days, weeks, months go by without having that realization, the faster time goes. So for me, contemplating death isn't, like I'm not scared of that. It's not uncomfortable for me. In fact, like it's inspirational because I accept and embrace it. Not to say I'm looking forward to it or anything, but I accept and embrace it as a regular and very normal part of life. And I think in doing that, the more I embrace it, like having the skull here, as I'm sure you've connected, and contemplating death, it allows me to feel more in tune with the passing of time and be a little bit more present in my day-to-day life. The challenge has been consistently connecting deeply with the awareness of death because you can't see it. It's intangible. I mean, you probably know what I mean. Unfortunately, you've probably connected with death when someone you love passes away or someone you were very familiar with passes away. And then for some days, some weeks, some months, depending on who the person was, you're really in tune with the fact that death is real. It's coming. It exists. And then during that time, your perspective changes a little bit, doesn't it? The way you view individuals, the way you view the things that you concern yourself with on a day-to-day basis, it changes in its importance. It changes in the way that you connect with it. But then, like all things, time goes by and then you get caught up with life and you're busy and you have responsibilities and you're taking care of your family and you have your own little life, individual responsibilities to deal with. And then you lose connection with the concept of death. It goes away. And so even though contemplating death has always been something that I've found value in, it's been difficult. And so I realized a human skull is a physical, tangible representation of the impermanence of life. It's a perfect tool and a resource to be a reminder for me every single day. Death. You know, there's a concept of memento mori. I don't know a lot about it, but it's like a Latin concept, I believe, to remember death. When I look at this skull, I believe that I'm looking at me. I can convince myself that that's me, because it is. I mean, that's how I look. That's how you look, more or less. At the end of the day, when you strip all the layers off, you got some holes for your nose, some holes for your mouth, a jaw that disconnects. It's almost like looking in a mirror. In the same way, when I pass the mirror and I see myself as I am right now, and I notice myself, I catch myself, I feel the same way every time I look at that skull. It's a reflection. It makes me realize that nothing really matters. It takes my concept and my outlook on myself and life, and it wipes it clean. It makes it a blank canvas. And then from that blank canvas, I can start filling it in with all the very few things in life that are important. And it's refreshing for me. I guess the best way of saying it is it feels like in a split second, my life is ripped away from me. I have nothing for a split second. And then in the very next split second, boom, my life is given back to me. And when it's given back, it's clearer, it's cleaner, it's shinier. And it holds more value because it went through this like washing machine of perspective that is contemplating death. It's like when you give yourself to the idea of death, not looking forward to it, not seeking death, but when you give yourself to the concept of death, the important things in life are clearly important. And then the unimportant things are just obviously unimportant. It takes away the blur from the important and unimportant, and there's a very clear line between what is and what isn't worthy of your focus in life. The petty arguments, unimportant. The person cutting you off in traffic, but you're both okay and you've moved on, it's unimportant. The quality time with people you care about, important. Doing the things that bring you fulfillment, important. Solitude, for me, important. Some people may be unimportant, I don't know. It's like when you connect with death, you connect with the nature of reality. And so that inspires me way more. Death inspires me way more than life ever could. Because in a way, it feels like death gives meaning to life. You know what I mean? It's to the point that I'm genuinely frightened by the thought of immortality. And I'm sure you've watched movies where like there's some dude searching for immortality. He makes a wish to live forever, or to exist forever, to be immortal, to be invisible, or invincible. I always get those two mixed up. Or the people that are looking for the fountain of youth. They want to stay young forever. That, to me, that's some old bullshit to me. I can't get with that at all. In my opinion, anybody who thinks immortality would be something worthwhile seeking out clearly hasn't really thought the concept through. Or at the very least, they don't have a realistic respect for the nature of the universe and the way this thing works. Because of course the reality of the universe is that everything comes to an end. Life comes to an end, Earth is going to come to an end, the sun is going to come to an end, galaxies come to an end. And so if you were in fact immortal, eventually, it might take a million years, but eventually, well, probably more than a million years, probably many millions of years, but eventually an immortal person would just be floating in the vacuum of space, scared and alone, and bored out of your mind. You just be space debris, just moving. I digress. As human beings, we have this warped perception about ourselves that kind of lingers in the back of our mind. We feel as though there's humans, and then there's nature. There's super intelligent human beings, and then there's everything else. Like we're special, like we're separate from everything else. And so when I look at the skull, or contemplate death deeply, there's no words, but there's this balancing sensation like, oh, it's a reminder, oh, we die too. As human beings, we're made up of the same things as everything else. Some carbon, some nitrogen, whatever else, whatever the ingredients are that everything is made up of. We're not that special. We come into existence and then we pass. It is humbling. Every morning, throughout the day, as I'm looking at a skull, or I give myself just a moment of opportunity to reflect on death, I humble myself. I ground myself back to a level where I should be, that I feel I should be. I'm aware that for many people, the idea of gazing into the eyes of a human skull It could be seen as strange and weird. And, it's abnormal. But I mean, first of all, I've never been one to really connect with being normal. I've always been a little unordinary. But I also think that sometimes you need novelty. You need something that's clearly different from everything else in order to really capture your attention. And for me, a skull captures my attention. And I'm aware that like Shakespeare did something with the skull in one of his plays, I think. It might have been Hamlet. I don't really remember. But I'm sure that had a lot to do with reflecting on death. I purposely, I didn't research it, so I don't want to, because I wanted to kind of talk to you and give you my perspective and the way I feel about it. But I'm not innovating here with a skull. It's been something that has been used to inspire people within themselves for a long time. But for me, it's the first time I've ever really allowed myself to consider having it as part of my workspace, as part of my this room, which is my kind of place for solitude and to separate myself from the rest of the world. And just in case you're wondering, there's never been a brain inside of that thing. It's a replica human skull. There'd be certain moral and ethical conflicts with buying an actual human skull. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure that I'd do it. So replica, very convincing, very intriguing replica human skull. And if, by the way, you do feel uncomfortable by the consideration or the concept of death, I would challenge you to consider why you feel that way. What's behind that feeling? Because it's not really, to me, it's not normal to feel uncomfortable by the concept of death. It's one of the most fundamental parts of existence, the end of things. We're so happy with birth, but then sometimes we shy away from reflecting on death. And if you ask yourself and inquire inwards, I think you might find something really interesting there. You might enlighten yourself. But what I would like to know is, how do you feel about death? What are your thoughts about it? I actually want to hear it. Let me know down in the comments. And do you feel like time is moving by quickly, or is it moving slow for you? What's your experience of time? What's your thought on death? Let me know down below. If you enjoyed this video, I welcome you to check out one of these videos up here. YouTube picked it out specifically for you from my library of videos. So give that a watch. As always, I appreciate you having a conversation here with me. It always makes me feel better after I do these videos. So hope you enjoy, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.